Hey, this is Zach here from Stable Dash. We're with Monica, the managing director of stablecoins at Anchorage Digital. Monica, thank you for sitting down with us today. How has the conference been going? We're at BISO, we're in Mexico City, and I'll say if you can look out right now, it's beautiful. I love the vibe of the conference. How's your day been going?
Been amazing. Thank you for hosting.
Stable Dash Live is sponsored by Agora, built for global institutions moving money at the speed of the internet. You can learn more at agora.finance.
I attended this conference last year, and it was definitely a must come back on my list. So happy to finally be here a year later.
What about it made it a must come back?
That's a great question. I think this conference last year was around right before Labor Day weekend.
Mhm.
And that was when Anchorage was still not official an issuer of stablecoins. And we had a lot of irons in the fire on stuff that we were doing in stablecoins. So we were
I want to talk about this, but I can't.
exactly, yes. So we had a lot of like internal momentum and just being here and understanding what the use cases and potential partners. I think here's where a lot of it started. So coming back here close to a year later and now seeing how much the business has grown as Anchorage Digital Bank now being an issuer, having the stablecoin solutions for banks, which is what I manage. It's kind of surreal.
And so you have a panel today. What's your panel on? Stablecoins, brother. We'll see where it goes.
Yes. And also kind of surreal again, the panelists, some of the panelists are the same. So it's good to see like a look back a year later on everything what we've accomplished.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be talking next year because this is our second year here as well. And I think it's always great to sit down and talk for the first time. But there is something that's fun to be able to see the journey throughout this year and next, and hopefully 5-10 years down the line. Let's rewind a bit. You mentioned like the feeling of we're sitting on this news, you imagine it, you have the irons in the fire. What has it felt like to go from there to now and to say, okay, now we are a bank and now we can bring, stablecoin issuance to the larger ecosystem?
Yes, that's a great question. I think a lot of it was preparation and execution. I think once the Genius Bill was signed in July of last year, that really put us in lockdown over the summer to understand where are the areas that we want to play and what are the partnerships that we want to achieve. And then starting into this conference last year, it was kind of like hit go.
Yeah.
But essentially, since then, we've announced 5 stablecoins that we now issue publicly. We have Tether's USAT, Ethena Labs USDtb, OSL's USD Go, Falcon Finance FUSD, and also Western Union's USDPT. So
That's the exciting one. I've gotten the chances to talk with Malcolm twice now too. Just one awesome guy. If you haven't watched his interviews, go back. You can find him on our YouTube. We had him at Stable Minded, which is our podcast. Then we talked with him at a very stable conference. What are those conversations like when you're going in and you're starting to say, hey guys, you can issue a stablecoin now? Unpack that? How do those conversations start? Where do people even need to start thinking about issuance?
yes, we start with the premise of being genius ready. So with the regulation being passed last summer and rulemaking being finalized through the end of the year, we find that it's very important to align these new issuances as close as possible to the Genius Bill. Because once that is completed, we want all these assets to be incorporated to the day-to-day as the plan and the legal framework really encourages. So making sure that we follow what are the reserve assets, what are the attestations cadence. So for example, we publish all our attestations monthly on our website, making sure that we also provide the right licensing. So Anchorage Digital Bank is the issuer of record. And then work closely with our named partners, which are the brands, on distribution. So they get a lot of say on where they want to play and where they want to incorporate. And that's also very fun to see each stable coin taking a life of its own in terms of where the geographic areas and companies that start to use them.
Have you always thought about stablecoin issuance like this? I'm thinking back to your years in the previous roles, or has your view on stablecoin issuance evolved? I think especially 2 or 3 years ago when we saw this narrative start to pick up, there was people on the side of, no, just go use the legacy established stablecoins and you just need to build on that. And then it was, oh, well, if we go issue all these stablecoins, the space is just going to be more fragmented than ever. How would you talk to somebody that is thinking through issuance in those realms? And like I said, how is your thoughts on it evolved?
To answer that question is exactly how our own stablecoins team has evolved over the past 18 months. So when we first started a stablecoins team at Anchorage, we really started from the premise of where does Anchorage win? So we are a qualified custodian. We have fiat capabilities. We have strong partnerships with protocols and blockchains. And then we also have this ecosystem of being active in the digital asset space in a secure and regulated way. Our first premise was, how do we engage in stablecoins? Do we partner, or do we form kind of networks, partnerships, different types of elements? And with, coming into March of last year, 2025, seeing the Genius Bill getting a lot of traction, then we, Anchorage Digital had the acquisition of Mountain Protocol, which they were an issuer of a stablecoin. So bringing that team in-house and bringing that expertise and that talent really propelled us to be ready once the bill was signed in July. So I think it's been a combination of what does Anchorage does well from an infrastructure and regulated way, the people that we've hired and incorporated, and then how we see the vision of stablecoins right now. And having regulation in the US has also allowed us to have really smart conversations with international partners as well that are looking to incorporate stablecoins on their cross-border payments.
And so when we think about the process of saying, okay, I'm bought in, I know I need to issue a stablecoin. You've heard in this industry for years that it was touted that, okay, stablecoins are going to just disrupt banks, and and this technology is going to be the one that pulls people away from banks. I got the opportunity to speak with Luke from MoneyGram the other day, and he says, we realized we had to disrupt ourselves. And that really stuck with me as saying, okay, how have banks evolved to think about stablecoins to disrupt their own operations? And in what way are you seeing that start to come to fruition?
Within the stablecoins team, we're focusing on two main verticals. One is the issuance of high quality stablecoins. And then the second one, which is the stablecoin solutions for banks, which is what I lead. We officially went public with our solution back in February of this year. And essentially, when we started to see what are the use cases of stablecoins, one of them is cross-border and cross-border with international parties. So we saw an opportunity to see international banks that want to use stablecoins within their own flows and have the direction and autonomy to be able to do those flows themselves. So bringing like the stablecoin sandwich inside their own operations. So
what do you mean by inside? If people were to think of like two different sandwiches, right? I know people love the stablecoin sandwich analogy, but that really stuck out where you said, well, we're bringing, I imagine now it's like, instead of going to Subway, I now just went and bought all the ingredients to make it in-house. Is that a relevant analogy, or what would you mean? What would you mean by that happening?
Oh, that's a good one. Instead of having external parties that dictate the stablecoin sandwich, I think fintechs were amazing in leading the way in terms of how this looks like. It's allowing banks to, I guess, have the ability to mint and redeem stablecoins natively within their own infrastructure, which is something that Anchorage provides. So if they want to pick the bread, they can do so themselves. They can also then have a nice bowl or sort of place to hold the stablecoin sandwich within Anchorage as a qualified custodian. So then as they scale their journey on having more, going from thousands to millions to billions in stablecoins, they have a trusted and regulated counterparty to scale that journey with them. And then finally, like, we also provide the connectivity with fiat as well. So instead of having to have like 3 different partners to do something, they can now rely on Anchorage to do all 3 in one and then pick their journey. So we do have, in every conversation, we come in with like kind of 3 big use cases that we see in the market. We engage with the banks, and usually they say, well, we want 1 and 2 or 1 and 4, or actually there's 4 use cases now that I say it. But then it becomes highly customizable because of the regulatory framework in each country and also what their pain points are.
And I guess I kind of have 2 questions. So one, I've heard, from your perspective, how relevant in this conversation is the revenue actually generated from these stablecoins to the bank's core operations? We've talked to a few people that have said, hey, no, this is among treasury managers, maybe 5% of them care about this. They more care about the programmability of this for our internal treasury operations and money movement. Is that still a key pillar of the conversation for why issue? Or is that that's icing on the cake, and what we really care about is how well can we move this money and how can we program it?
On the why issue, it really has to come down to distribution. So if a named partner has a sticky network and they can benefit from having those dollars on chain and generating network effects, then definitely that's a pathway to go. but we also have conversations where they can use existing stable coins and test it out. I think going from a 0 to 100 sometimes may be a little too much. It's start to incorporate the stable coins flow, get going, start building the use case, and then potentially you even graduate to building your own stable coin.
So if you met somebody here, I was just having this conversation actually before our interview, and I was actually with Aaron from Brazil Crypto Report, where we're noticing sometimes there's this gap. There's the people that come to these conferences, they have these conversations, and they're like, great, I have to approach the board. And they're like, but what do I do next? How do you maybe work as partners to say like, hey, we don't have to go 0 to 100. Let's just go 0 to 1. What is that 0 to 1 step right now?
Great. Yeah. I think that this is where we start discussing the 4 use cases for stable coins. So the first one is treasury management. So the ability to use stable coins to be a Nostrovos or challenger and eliminate or reduce trapped capital. So if you're able to send a stable coin, convert it into fiat and do third-party payments in the US, I think that that's already revolutionary in terms of unlocking working capital. The second one becomes corporate client inbounds. We're seeing that especially in many emerging markets, including LATAM, a lot of the big conglomerates already are exposed to stablecoins through their cross-border payments and just international trade. So allowing banks to have the infrastructure to accept those stablecoins as a new source of, for lack of a better word, deposit, that allows the banks to continue to be very active in the space and also gives these growing companies that are having more access to stablecoins the relief of having a trusted banking partner to be able to manage those assets. Then the third is the remittances. So we're seeing a lot of conversations with large payment processors that already settle against international banks on the fiat side. There's an ability to do that first leg on chain with stablecoins to be able to reduce either pre-funding or post-funding contracts and obligations. For that one, I think that's going to be more of a 6 to 12 months activation, but it's great that the conversations are happening. And back to your original point of, how do you justify the cost? We like to call this team like Stablecoin Solutions because we come with new ideas. I think if you start to do the reverse and be like how much you're saving, you're always going to come back in the negative because if you might be saving on this aspect of the flow, but you might have to hire a compliance officer, and then that math never really works out. How engaged with clients and prospects is like you have all this net new business that you cannot currently service because you don't have the infrastructure, because you're not part of this flow. This is a way to build into the future.
Yeah, that's definitely an area we haven't got to dive into. Obviously, we speak with a lot of managing directors or founders, but when you think about compliance teams, product teams, are they ready to come and start, building on and with this infrastructure? One area that it feels like it's starting to become my focus is non-USD stablecoins, and where do they fit into this conversation? I'm especially thinking of if you're making your sandwich and you're settling with all these different fiat currencies, at what point would it maybe make sense to start issuing your own, maybe GBP or BRL or, Mexican peso? I think we see a, non-USD stablecoin over there. Is that coming onto your radar, or the conversations like right now, hey, we just need to get going with USD. That's the focus and we'll see where non-USD go? Or is that what we're going to be talking about next year as this is the next phase?
Definitely by this time next year, I think we will have non-USD conversations. What we're seeing today is the Genius Act just provided so much momentum on the USD side and provided a regulated pathway that we want to see all those assets live and get traction. And when we're working with international banks, as of today, they're comfortable using USD denominated stablecoins because they already have a lot of exposure to USD. And I think it becomes a good tool for them to get their sea legs to understand, what do I need to do to hold the stablecoins? What are the controls that I need to do? Like, do I need a digital asset custodian? How do I locate liquidity? What are, ways that we can use this better versus our traditional rails? So we're seeing that USD also becoming a good learning for that ecosystem. But then after, 3 to 4 months, these banks start to flip around and say, what if we issue a non-USD stablecoin? What would that take? I think another point to focus on too is when we think of non-USD stablecoins, there's a yield component to that exposure to non-USD stablecoins and that potential yield. And I think maybe they take in a different form and maybe become more of a yield bearing asset than an actual stablecoin. So more to come, but I think that the USD part is becoming a good trailblazer in terms of understanding what does an ecosystem look like that's running on stablecoins.
What do you think that ecosystem starts to look like? Kind of bigger picture question, but I feel like we're in this kind of like this in between phase, where we're getting there. Not everybody's on board. People are coming on board, and we've kind of asked this question: where does the final form factor of this upgraded global system, does it start to feel very similar to ours? Is it going to feel different? Is it kind of going to be a hybrid of both?
I think to answer that question, I'll preview your next question, which is how did I get into stablecoins to begin with? I started my interest in blockchain when I was an attorney 10 years ago. I was doing a lot of signature pages by hand and just started to think there must be a technology that's going to simplify these transactions of trust. I started reading about blockchain, the technology, and said there could be something here. Then I went to investment banking, and I was there when Bitcoin went to 20K and back down around 2017, and just realized seeing like the gap between some of the analysts being like, this is something in the future finance, and some of the more senior folks saying this is nothing. So that made me go into my own journey of understanding what is blockchain and what can it do, and essentially codifies transactions of trust, which are done by bankers and lawyers. So me as a professional, I started to
that was like the light bulb.
Yes, go deep into. So my origin story is about reducing inefficiencies and making transactions a little bit easier rather than pushing paper. So then when stablecoins became more of a thing after, let's say, the beginning of 2025, or at least a thing to me, it resonated a lot because it kind of had the same kind of topics, right? It's a very, you're moving money. It's very regulated. It's very high stakes. It's a fintech with a capital F, meaning like the financial part, the compliance, the legal part is more important than even the tech to a certain degree. So I gravitated to that space because it had that complexity, and then also the overarching ethos that I believe in of simplifying transactions and transactions of trust specifically. So fast forwarding to where I see stablecoins going forward, I think it has to do with I don't think we've even imagined it yet, but just the ability to send assets quicker, more liquid, and having also brands associated with those assets. I think it will be pretty interesting to see where we go.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll let you get back to mingling and prepping for your panel coming up here. I guess anything that you would want to leave a stablecoin minded listener, maybe even somebody that they're just starting to dip their toes in, maybe something that, like you said, was intimidating at first, or even any analogies that might have, helped you cross the chasm. I know you just kind of briefly alluded to one, but what would you have to say to somebody that's a first time attendee here and they're getting started?
I think for the next conversation, I need to improve my stablecoin sandwich analogy and really make it through the bread and through the meat. Exactly. I think there's lots to be done there, but I think the most important part is have a beginner's mindset. I think this is new to many people, not only in traditional finance, in the crypto space. If we really fast forward, it's been less than a year really from the Genius Act. So attending conferences like this, having engaging conversations, and starting really with one use case and iterating, I think it's super important, because if you start to boil the ocean on all the capabilities, you might get stuck in analysis paralysis, and really looking deeply at, who are the partners and who are the people that you want to grow with.
And I would just even add on that, just go try to send stablecoins yourself. Go use an app. And I feel like for so many people, there was like just kind of that one moment where you're like, wait, it was that fast? Like, just kind of a nice way to start breaking down those barriers. So, but Monica, thank you for sitting down with us. We'll be right back with another guest shortly, live from the BitSo Stablecoin Conference here in CDMX. This was Monica from Anchorage Digital. And like I said, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
Awesome.